Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today. I'm Adam Keys, Product Manager at TestOut, and we're happy to have Catherine Fuster on the line with us today. Before I introduce her, just a couple administrative items for our webinar. If you've attended with us before, the questions panel on the right side of your screen when the GoToWebinar platform pops up, that's how we'll answer questions, take comments from you. So you just click that up, you enter a question whenever you have it, and if it's something that'll apply to everyone, we'll either introduce the question then or save it to the end for a Q&A. And if it's something that just applies to you or your program, I'll just go ahead and answer that the best I can and bring it up with Catherine if we need to. At the end of the survey, as usual, we have a quick 5-question survey. It's really just what did you think about the survey, what additional topics would you like to know, and anything you would like TestOut to know. So to introduce Catherine, she has been at Southern New Hampshire University and also Lakes Region Community College, and she's gone through the process of integrating and setting up Office Pro, also has been called Desktop Pro or Desktop Pro Plus. She's done that a few times, has great experience in both online setup, in-person, traditional, non-traditional, and as well helping K-12 programs integrate TestOut. So with that, I wanted to just pass it over to her. She'll take it from here. I'll be on the background to answer questions, and we're grateful to hear from you, Catherine, and go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. So we're going to get started. This is going to be TestOut Office Pro best practices and things I wish I knew. I am going to, hopefully, if this works, there we go. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, and then we'll get into some more meat and potatoes of everything. So who am I and why am I here? My name is Catherine Fuster. I have an MBA in technology management, and I have a bachelor's in business administration, computer information systems. I have spent the last 10 years in higher ed, and I have taught traditional, hybrid, online, flipped classrooms. I have also been a traditional, a non-traditional, an online, and an in-person student. So I kind of know how our students are thinking. Before that, or I guess concurrently, it overlaps. I did I did quite a bit of consulting and IT training and business training for the last 20 years, mostly for Fortune 500 companies. My last job let me go into a multitude of different businesses, anywhere from small mom and pop shops all the way up to the big Fortune 500. And so I have quite a bit of background in Office and kind of the way businesses operate, those kind of things. And now I've been using TestOut for almost 3 years. We're going to talk about the Office Pro product today, but I also use quite a few of their other products in my other classes. So TestOut is not new. Our program is fully integrated into TestOut at this point, and we actually really love it. So what is TestOut? I have a feeling most of you who are on the call already know kind of what TestOut is, and you have an idea. You've probably already talked to some of the product support, but we're going to look at TestOut Office Pro a little bit. I won't spend too much time, and we'll go through some of the different features. TestOut is an online learning tool that includes video lessons with printable written transcripts, labs and hands-on learning, which we all love. There are some integrated quizzes and your ability to make your own quizzes, and fact sheets. So these are things that students can print off and refer back to later. And so let's take a quick look. I'm going to flip screens and hopefully this works. And I'm going to go over to TestOut. So once I get logged into TestOut, I click on the My Products tab up at the top. And here's my TestOut Office Pro. This is just my view as an instructor. Students will see a different view where their classes are all listed. But I can also click on My School, and I can see what classes I have in session. I did create this TestOut presentation one just in case we need to go in and look at Office Pro. But I'm going to go back to my products, and I'll scroll down to Office Pro. This is where I'm going to go to find my teaching aids And this is where I can actually go in and I can look at the product. If I click on Office Pro, this is typically what a student will see. I'm going to click on the chapters section up at the top right-hand corner, and this lists all the chapters that Office Pro will cover. And it gives me a course outline over on the right-hand side. So within each section or within each chapter, it will show me the sections, which are a lot like chapters of a book. So when I talk to my students, we might call them modules. We might call them chapters. I think recently we've been calling them modules just to mimic what our LMS system has, so our learning management system. They call them modules, so we call these modules at my school. And inside of Office Pro, we have online essentials, computer essentials, common office features, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access, Outlook. And then we also have a set of practice exams, both for the Office Pro practice exam, which is through TestOut, and then also the Microsoft practice exam. So at my school, we typically teach more toward the Office Pro practice exam and less toward the Microsoft practice exam. And I'll get into more of why we do that in a little bit, but that's just the way we've chosen to tailor our program. So within each one of these chapters, there are some different items. There are videos, which you can see a little film strip. There are fact sheets, which look like a little note card. And then if we scroll down, there are concept questions, which are kind of like little practice questions, practice exams. And then there's a mouse, and that mouse is our lab symbol. So we have skills labs, challenge labs, and applied labs. Skills labs are practice. They're going to walk the student through step by step how to do something, how to complete a task or an activity. Challenge labs are a little bit less of that hand-holding, and then the applied labs are where they're going to do it completely on their own. We tend to, in my school, not grade the skills labs because they can do them as many times as they want to get that skill down. But we do assign grades to challenge labs and applied labs. So it's just how you want to do it. I'm going to close out of this, and we're going to go back over to the PowerPoint. So we looked a little bit at TestOut. I didn't go into too much detail since most of you should be familiar. But now we're going to talk about integrating TestOut into your TestOut Office Pro into your program. So the very first thing we're going to talk about is a traditional classroom. So the definition of a traditional classroom is we're in a brick and mortar building. We have face-to-face communication or class time, and then we have in-class lectures and activities. So for us at our school, at Lakes Region Community College, we meet once a week and meet our contact time requirement in that once a week setting. So normally my class meets from, I think it's 9 until noon, 1 day a week. During that time, we cover the material. So I may not show, well, I might show one of the videos out of TestOut, or I'm going to demonstrate and lecture on my own to give the students the skills that they're going to need for that upcoming week. Then, when the students are at home or once I turn them loose to do their work, we use the videos and the fact sheets for a refresher, or if they need to go back and say, you know what, I didn't quite catch what she was talking about, let me go back and watch a video again. And then we do our skills labs in class. And that way, if they're really coming up against something where they're not understanding, even with that extra hand-holding or that extra support, we are there to help them get that skill before they go on and do an applied lab or a challenge lab. If there's enough time in class and they choose to do that applied lab or challenge lab in class, I do let them do it in class. But for the most part, those are done as homework to reinforce the learning. We use capstones and exams for end-of-topic assessments. So within TestOut, and I'll talk more to this at the end. I'll show you where it's at. They actually supply some capstones for each topic. So at the end of Word, at the end of Excel, at the end of Access, at the end of PowerPoint, there are these capstones that the students can use. And it's an activity that encompasses all the skills that they've used over the course of that module or that chapter. And then they have to do it on their own in kind of a real world environment. So we will use those at the end of each chapter to reinforce the learning and to assess their skills. And then we'll also do a topic exam. There are some canned ones within TestOut that you can use. I'll flip back over. Let me go home. If I come in here to custom exams, once I've created my class, these exams pop up. So there's this access end of chapter. We've used this for several different versions, and I haven't archived them off yet. That's why you see so many of these. But there are these end of chapter exams, and you can go in and you can schedule these exams for the students to go in and they can take at the end of the chapter. For us, I go ahead and I select my class, and I set them on automatic scheduling. So that allows the student to the next time they log in, that exam is scheduled and they can log in whenever they want to. If you choose to set dates and times for the exam, you can choose manual scheduling, and you can schedule the students for the exact date and time that you want them to take that topic exam. You can also think of it as a quiz. For us, they're graded more like quizzes, but they are definitely helpful, and we use them. One thing that we've kind of run into over the years, these do have time limits on them to finish. You can create your own exam, and you can actually copy this exam over to create a non-time limit exam. So I've done that in years past for those students who might have accommodations that need to be made, or for students who are just maybe have test anxiety, or if we had something come up in class that, some interruption. We're in the Northeast, so power failure, whatever it is, they're going to need more time for that exam. I can do that. I've also used them as an alternative exam for a student who might be taking the class for a second time. Instead of giving them that same exam again, I will go ahead and create an alternative to that. So there are the custom exams. I'm going to go back over here. And then for us, when I'm teaching in a traditional classroom, I teach to that certification exam, and we use that as our final exam in class. So at the very end of the class, the very last day, well, actually for this class, it's the second to last day, we take that certification exam in class. And that way, by the end of the class, they actually walk away with a certification in hand that they know that they've done that. I've found that it's a great final exam. It does cover PowerPoint, Word, and Excel. It does not cover Access or Outlook. So if those are things you want in a final exam, you can create your own, where I just showed you, and do a custom exam that way. But for us, this works for us, and we like that they're walking away with that certification. So I gave a syllabus example, and this was my class from fall, not my spring one, and this was an in-person class. And so the way we've kind of structured that traditional class is that the first week we get in, we go over everything that we usually go over in the very first class. We do, what to expect in school, how to go to class in your LMS system. And then the very next thing I cover is how to get into TestOut. Because if I don't cover that up front and right away and make sure everybody's logged in and we're all on the same page, I have some stragglers. So that we get together in class, we make sure everybody gets logged in and everybody can access TestOut. And then we hit the ground running. We do chapters 1 and chapter 2 that very first week. And I'm going to go back to TestOut. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. Oops, wrong. Are online essentials and computer essentials. This has really helped us get these students up to speed, not just within this class, but overall as a school. So they know how to do things like work a browser, and they understand how to clear cookies, or they understand how to disable pop-ups. Those simple little things that we don't think of or we take for granted that students may or may not be able to do. This gets us all on the same page and has cleared up a lot of confusion. So we found it very beneficial, and we've put that in our program. So then starting the next week, we start into Common Office Features and Word. And we cover Word for 3 weeks, so weeks 2 through 4. So that first week, we talk about the ribbon up at the top, and I might present how that ribbon is used and how it is common across all the products in Microsoft Office, and maybe what might be a little bit different as we're going to be moving through. Then we start to cover Word, and we've broken Word up into 3 different weeks, and it's actually a very good pace for the students we found. It's not too overwhelming, and they get a lot of time to master these skills. And then that very last week of each topic, so every topic we've actually divided into 3 weeks. The very last week of that topic is when they're going to do their Word exam, or that topic exam that I just showed you, and the Word capstone. So then they'll be able to put together that project, and they'll upload that capstone into the LMS, and I'll manually grade that. So that's been great. The capstone really, that was something in the very beginning that wasn't available in TestOut, and TestOut was amazing and put that in for us. We were coming up with ones on our own, but this is nice for continuity's sake. Everybody is doing the same capstone. So then we move through and we go through Excel, and we cover Excel in the next 3 weeks. And then we cover Access next, even though in the flow of TestOut, PowerPoint is technically next. We find that if I kind of start off a little bit easier with Word, and then we move to Excel, and then we throw Access in there, it builds up to where it's hard, and then we kind of ease off a little bit because PowerPoint is very similar to Word. So we tell them if they can get through Excel and get through Access, it's all downhill from there. And that's worked out really well for us. It keeps the momentum going in the class and keeps interest in the class. Also, on those exam and capstone weeks, if you notice week 10, we have, I have them watch the labs, I have them watch the videos. Oh, I actually didn't list on this one. Let me go back. Let's look at, oh, there we go. Let's look at Excel, since I didn't list it on Access. That was an oops. If I look at Excel, if you notice, I have Excel only challenge graded. So I'm only grading those challenge labs for those students to give them a little break, since they have the additional exam and they have the additional capstone. And then we go on, and for this class, we end up, we have an in-class work week. Part of their PowerPoint capstone, so we follow the capstone that was given in TestOut, but I have them give a presentation, and they have to present that PowerPoint presentation the very last week of the class. And so that's, we do 50% actual of the grade of the presentation that they're coming up with, and then 50% the presentation that they give in class. So it's kind of divided up. And then that week 15, since we are a 16-week semester, they're doing their final exam. So they come in class, we sit down, they do that final exam with the certification, and I actually print off their certificates after they've completed their exam, so they all walk out with their certificate. And that's a really good, what I'm looking for. it's kind of a feel-good moment for them when they can walk out with that certification in hand and they can go home and hang it up, and it's really a warm fuzzy for them. That was kind of the syllabus that we follow. Now, I've taught this in a 12-week format. I've also taught it in an 8-week format. Typically in the 8-week format, I won't use the certification exam as the final exam. In an 8-week format, instead, I'll come up with my own. And then they still have access to that certification that they can take later on if they choose to. In the 12-week format, I'll couple up on Word, and I'll do 2 modules in Word, or 2 chapters, not chapters, but 2 weeks worth of Word in one in the beginning, and then I'll do 2 weeks worth of PowerPoint in one as well. It seems like it works better if you have to shrink the number of weeks to pull those sections together. So, how are we doing? Are there any questions so far?
Doing well so far.
Okay. All right. So, now, flipped classroom. I only in the last couple of years have started teaching in a flipped classroom, and a lot of people don't know what a flipped classroom is. So, the definition of a flipped class is one that inverts the typical cycle of content acquisition and application so that students read, watch videos, and take notes before class to learn concepts. The instructors guide students through hands-on activities and discussions in the classroom. So for us, when I teach in this method, students will watch their videos and do labs before class. And then they'll come into class and I will do student-led lectures. So sometimes I'll assign a student, you're going to teach 3.1 to the class, right? Or section 4.2 to the class, whatever section I choose. And it is up to them to learn the material. So they'll go home and they'll watch the video and they'll read the fact sheet and they'll come up with a method to teach that segment to the class. Typically, they'll come up with an activity. They might pull up Word or pull up Excel, and they will show the class how to perform the steps. And they've learned all of that from TestOut without my intervention, which is fantastic. And then we'll have discussions in class, and then sometimes we'll do the capstones in class together because maybe we need to fill in some gaps that a student's missed, or maybe there's something that we didn't cover more in depth that maybe we should have. And so we will do the capstone projects in class with the instructor there. And then we still will use the end of topic exams and those final certifications as the final. I make sure that they have got all the material that they need. But what I found is that TestOut does such a great job in the videos and the fact sheets and the labs and the practice questions that most of the time there's very little for me to go back and fill in. So that's fantastic. But it's great in this flip situation because it does free up that class time for students to ask questions, for us to maybe tackle something in class together, or we can have discussions of why do businesses use Outlook? What's the benefit of using Outlook? Let's go and let's look and let's research. And why do you think this is the case? And we can have those in-depth instructions instead of it just being the hands-on piece. So then in an online classroom, all coursework is done at home using TestOut and the LMS system, so the learning management system, to log into class. There's no face-to-face time or real-time interaction unless a student requests it. And so for this, the use of labs, videos, and fact sheets come into play. We still do the topic exams and the capstones for assessment of material. I will add in discussion questions, and typically I add in 1 to 2 discussion questions per topic. So Word might have a discussion question thrown in for 1 week. Excel might have a discussion question thrown in. And I do that too to balance out because we won't have that ability for them to present at the end of the class. So this kind of takes the place of presentations but it also helps us have those conversations that we're not getting in the classroom. And we can have those in the face-to-face classroom. We can still have those, but we have them in an online format. And then the final exam. You may or may not use the final exam, or you can use a custom exam for the online classroom. I know I make very few changes to my online class from my face-to-face class. Everything that I set up in my face-to-face class just translates straight over into the online class. And that's the beauty of using TestOut, is once you set it up, it can really be run in either format with very few tweaks. And the students are still getting all the same content. And then last but not least is this hybrid classroom. And I teach quite a few classes in a hybrid. So a hybrid is a mixed time of online and traditional classroom. You may or may not meet every week. You may meet for a smaller amount of time each week. It just depends on the setup. So, and then it runs similar to an online class. And we use class time to check in on progress, answer any questions, conduct exams or the certification exam. I also use it to go into, if we have something that was more challenging, we can spend class time on that instead of just on instruction of all the topics. And so I use this more in some of the other TestOut products, but for this one, we have the ability to either meet for a shorter time frame during the class, and I can still lecture if I want to, and we can still meet every week, and then they do the rest of the work on their own. Or I have some classes set up where we might meet 3 times or once per topic, just as a check-in and maybe to do the topic exam or for them to present a capstone, something like that. And then we also still include those discussion questions, because even in a hybrid situation, sometimes it's really nice to have more contact time, and this allows us to have that contact time. And then typically in a hybrid situation, if it is a limited amount of times that we meet during the term, let's say 3 times or once per week, those I do make a required attendance for those classes, just to make sure everybody's caught up and we're all on the same page. So as we move forward toward that certification exam, I know that everybody's got all those skills. Now, at the same time, in any one of these methods, I'm constantly going back and looking to see how they're doing grade-wise. And TestOut gives us this great tool. Let me go back in here, where I can pull reports, and I can look at my grade book. I can do specific resource scores by class. I can look at individual scores by product, certification practice exam scores, and et cetera, et cetera. The one that I use the most is this class grade book. And I know I don't have any students in this class, but this is the way this looks. All the students will show up on the left. I can go through and see how they're doing on the right. I can narrow down if I just want to look at exams or labs. I have lessons or videos. Normally I don't check those unless I want to see who's actively participating and who might be skipping somewhere to see where they're struggling. And then I also can narrow it down. I can create specific reports per student if I want to do it that way, but it lets me go through and look and see how each student is doing. I can also export this out. That's hidden for me right now behind the webinar. But I can export this out to a spreadsheet, and then I can import that into my LMS if I'm not fully integrated, or I can export it out, and that gives me the ability to kind of manipulate data and see where I'm at and what I'm actually needing. I'm going to minimize this really quick. There we go. All right, so Instructor Resources. This is huge for us. Within the Instructor Resources that TestOut provides, there are accessibility documents. So this document gives you kind of an overview of what's been said or done in a lab or a video. So if you have a student who needs some extra accessibility help, you have that ability to give the content of those videos in that. Class activities. So there are PowerPoints and capstones in that class activities section. That is typically what I go to that section for, and where I pull out that information. There are course outlines. There's a getting started section that helps you get started with TestOut. And then there's lesson plans. And one of the most valuable parts of the lesson plans that I've found, other than the lesson plan itself, is that they include the approximate time per week that students can expect to spend in the course. And so I've actually taken that section and printed it for students before if they are struggling to schedule their time and they know that they're going into these labs, but they don't know how long it's going to take. It gives them a great estimate of how long that they're going to spend in each section of the course. So that's one of the most valuable things that I've had. I'm going to click back over here really quick before I go in here. And I'm going to show you where that was. So if I go into my products and I scroll down to Office Pro and I click on Teaching Aids. In this Teaching Aids category, there's my accessibility document. Here are my class activities. So there are applied lab sample documents. Those are what we do in the applied labs. Video sample documents, what you'll see in videos. Activity files for instructor PowerPoints. There's the capstone projects. That's what we use. And then there are the instructor PowerPoints. Course outline, release notes. The release notes, there have been several iterations of Office Pro. There were a few versions of Desktop Pro. It's always great to go into the release notes to see what's new. There's the Getting Started guide and the instructor guide. And then there's a course schedule creator, and then there's some lesson plans. So that's where you'll find all of these documents. So now I'm going to talk about getting buy-in. So when I mean getting buy-in, it's getting students to believe that what we're using is, what's the word I'm looking for, is beneficial to them. Okay, so for students, presentation is everything. So the way you present the test out in the very beginning, I have some students that are like, why do I want to use a simulation? Why am I going to do this and not actually use Word? Why am I going to do this? And, so number one, they can do this from their home in their pajamas without having to worry, do I have Word installed on my PC at home or do I not? They can use it from a Chromebook. They have the ability to do this in a more flexible manner. And I let them know that. I also let them know, like we're up here in the Northeast, and if we have a class canceled because of weather, then they can still do this at home without me. So they can watch the video, they can do the labs, and they don't necessarily need me there to present the information. If they're sick, if they need to miss a class, if something else is going on, they still have the ability to go to class from their house. And this has saved several students. I have a lot of non-traditional students who have children, who have jobs, who have other things going on in their lives, and the ability for them to go, okay, I know I have to miss class this day, but I'm still going to get the material I need, has been wonderful. The other thing that's gotten them to get buy-in into this is that they get a certification to put on their resume. So when they walk out of this class, if they've passed that certification exam, which the majority of them do, then they can take that and put it on their resume, and right away they have a marketable skill with a certification. And then the last one is it costs less. So the last textbook we used, I want to say, was close to $300 between the textbook and the online resource, and this is only a fraction of that. So the fact that it costs less, that frees up more money for them to, feed their kids or go out to dinner or whatever it is that's important to them. So that's been huge. And the certification is included in that cost. So that was big, and for them to understand that. So, instructors, to get instructor buy-in for TestOut. One of the big things was this uniform presentation to students to ensure consistent outcomes are met. So for us, we have several different instructors that are teaching, we call it a software apps class, but the Office Pro material. So in order to get that uniform presentation to make sure all the students are getting a consistent outcome for the same class, this is great. We're all using the same material. All the students have access to the same resources. We're using the same capstones. We know that it's a consistent class across the board. It's easy to use, and we can integrate it with our LMS system. So for us, we're using Canvas now. We've used it with Blackboard before. I think I also used it with Brightspace. And we've integrated it so that test scores move over on their own. And even if they don't, sometimes a student won't hit a certain button. We have the ability to sync the scores and everything comes over. So that really frees up my time. I'm not hunting for grades. I'm not having to manually grade everything. And it's all coming over. And then the ability to customize exams and quizzes. So for a student who might need, like I said, a time limit removed, I can go ahead and create an exam without a time limit. For a student who is taking the class a second time, I can go ahead and customize that quiz so that it's not the same one they took the last time. Or if I just want to change it up, so I know a student isn't, searching the web for answer, whatever it is, I can go ahead and I can make that new quiz or new exam. So far, instructors have really bought in and they're owning it, and it's been a really good, easy process. And then administration. So a lot of this is the same as our instructors, right? The emphasis is to ensure consistent outcomes, and the integration with the LMS to track the outcomes is huge. Right now, there's a big push for us. In Canvas, we have the ability to track outcomes, and we can tie all of this together to those outcomes and then basically get real-time data to see if we're meeting those outcomes. It's cost-effective. There was no upfront cost to the school. Students just buy the software. We teach the software, or buy the licensing. We teach it, and there's no out-of-pocket as far as the school is concerned. And then the ease of use by high school partners. We are partnered with various high schools around our region in a program called Running Start. So where high school students can get college credit for the classes. And so I work with multiple high school teachers who teach the same class in the high school. And TestOut does have a K through 12 program, and they're using the same software or same programming that we use, and there is no big textbook that these high schools have to purchase up front. If they are not up to date on their Word version or their Office version, they don't have to worry about that. They're getting this simulation, and these high school students are going in and they're able to not just do their work in class, but also outside of class. And so this has been huge for our high school partners as well. And I know there is a push for OER resources, so those open educational resources. And we're actually actively talking about how to implement that. And while TestOut is above the threshold to be considered an OER, we have been looking at ways to incorporate it into maybe a lab fee, and then the students would see it still as an OER class. So it's just a different way to market the class. Yes, they have a higher lab fee, but they don't have to pay out of pocket for those textbooks and those kind of things. So I think that's about it as far as what I've had to talk about. You guys have been more than patient with me talking, and I hope I didn't go too quickly. Is there any questions that anybody has? Is there anything you're curious about or you want me to show you?
Just as a reminder, the questions panel is part of the GoToWebinar task panel that pops up when you're in here. So if you see questions there, you can type it in. I did have one that's come through that I think would be interesting for everyone. and it's from an instructor who's teaching in the K-12 space, and they've broken Office Pro into 2 semesters, and said that they're still finding some difficulty in students grasping the concepts. Do you have any ideas or suggestions on how to reach to those students?
For us, I know my K through 12 partners, they actually do it in 1 semester and get through the material. The class meets every single day. They are definitely reinforcing the learning with some extra learning if need be. So there are, let me flip back over to TestOut. When I went into these teaching aids, and I can come in here to this applied lab sample documents or even video sample documents. You can pick either one. And I'm going to download that and open it up. And this gives the students more attempts or more, what's the word I'm looking for? Availability. We'll see if it'll pop up on my system. This isn't my, there we go. More availability. You can provide some of these to your students. So here's one, prepare a resume. We'll bring this up. So they can go through and they can edit this resume the same way they would do on the applied lab, but then you can give them some more objectives to it. So you can add the criteria that you want or the criteria that they're struggling with and let them have another go around with this, or you could do it together in class if you wanted to, but it's a document that you could definitely walk through together and give them that extra hands-on. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
One other suggestion I've heard before is we've got student analytics built into the TestOut product. When you go into your class, you can run reports on product usage or percentage complete or time spent in the course. And I've heard from several teachers that if you've got some students that are really struggling to complete the labs or grasp the concepts in the labs, to take a look at kind of their product usage and see, hey, have they done the video lessons and the fact sheets leading up to that lab, or do they just jump into the lab and just try to do it and say it makes no sense when they don't understand how to do it? Everything in TestOut's built sequentially, so that way as they do the video learning and the video demonstrations, they gain the knowledge necessary to complete the labs that are later on in that section. So that's another thing I've heard multiple
times.
So
I've had students who have come to me and said, I don't get it. And I've gone through and I've looked in here, and if you notice exams, it tells you how much time in each resource it's been. Of course, like I said, I don't have any students in this right now, but that's been helpful. The other thing that I've found helpful is for those students who are struggling. I have some students, over the last few years, I've had quite a few learning disability students who we've had to make some accommodations for, or students who are autistic, or students who have some sort of special need. And so if I come in here to Office Pro and let me come down here. I'm going to have them watch a video. So if I come in here to Computer Essentials and I'm having them watch this video, if I have them play it with interactive script, I'm going to hit play and then I'm going to pause it. As they're speaking, it's highlighting the words over here on the right. They have the option of printing this sheet off and using it as notes, almost creating their own book, right? You can put that in a binder and they can go back and they can highlight and they can review it later. You can copy pieces and parts of it if it's something you find that you need to go back and look at. The other nice thing as well is for those students who maybe they're speaking too quickly and they're like, wait, I didn't quite get that. You can come in here and I can slow down whoever's speaking on the video to half the speed, or if it's something that the student knows that they know, we can actually go up and we can double the speed, which is a little funny. They all sound like chipmunks, but those things can help that student as well. I have one student right now who she has some accommodations, and she will print off all of these sheets, and she has made her own binder because that's what's working best for her right now. And so that's a great help as far as that student is concerned. Okay. So anything else?
Another question, what method of instruction, you went over the different ways you can integrate Office Pro. Which method have you found to be the most successful with students in getting their attention and having them be successful with the course?
So I think it really depends on the student. Certain students do really well in an online environment and are really self-motivated and self-driven, and they succeed no problem online. I have other students that they really need that face-to-face. They're unsure and they need that hand-holding, and those tend to thrive more in a traditional setting. I do find as we've implemented multiple versions of TestOut. We use, like I said, just about every product they have. Once they're familiar with TestOut, so maybe that very first class is in a traditional setting, after that, they're comfortable with it and they have no problem moving into an online setting and keeping the pace and keeping going because they understand what's expected and how everything works. And so I think it really just depends. I enjoy all of it. It's worked out great for just about every scenario that we've gone over. It's very rare that I have a time where somebody's really struggling in any one of those situations.
Great. And in the online environment, how do you motivate those students that have a hard time with it, or how do you help coach them along to get through it if they're struggling?
So if those students are struggling, typically that's why we throw in those discussions. So we'll have a discussion about, Word and what are the components or how do they see themselves using that in their future career. I think it's all tying it back to something that means something to them. So if I have a business student and I can tie in why they're going to be using Word and what they're going to be using that for and why it's important, that definitely helps to motivate that student. I always throw in a general questions discussion as well. So if somebody has a question about any part of TestOut or any part of whatever it is we're covering, they can go into that general questions section and throw out a question and go, you know what, I'm just not understanding this. Can you explain this to me? And we'll go through and we'll explain that. Or I also encourage students to answer each other's questions in that section. If I might not have seen it because I was just in the classroom and I popped out and they happened to ask that question right after I popped out, then if another student sees it before I do, they can answer that question. So we try and create a collaborative environment and we always try and connect with that student to make it mean something for them.
Excellent. And then if you have another question, throw it in there quickly. I'm going to answer this one. Just there are a lot of resources that TestOut offers to help get you integrated and running on LMS, on teacher training. We have dedicated training specialists here to help everything get up and running. One website I do recommend for those asking about LMS and other integration is testout.com/implementation. And that's a team that we have here that walks through every aspect of getting TestOut set up in a course, whether it's using an LMS, helping you to map the course to existing standards that you're using, instructor training and onboarding, any ongoing support, taking down anything that you need is available through that team. So that's one place that you can look. And with that,
can I add really quick? They have been amazing. We've integrated with multiple platforms. Like I said, I've done this with Blackboard and with Canvas and I think with Brightspace. They have been so good about providing support. And if anything ever goes wrong or you have a question or something hiccups, their tech support has just been fabulous. I can go to support, I can pull up a chat window, I can type to them, I can pick up the phone and call them, and they've been so responsive and so quick to answer any questions or any needs. It's just been amazing.
Great, thank you. And we're going to have to wrap up. I know there are a couple outstanding questions. If you have any other questions or any other needs, I'm more than happy to help get you to the right place. My direct email is akeys, so the letter A, K-E-Y-S, at testout.com. And if you have anything else that you need help with, please just don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I can connect you with instructors such as Catherine who have been through similar processes, or with our implementation team or training. Whatever you need, we're here to help. Catherine, thank you very much for your time today. Very helpful to see how you've implemented it, how you have used Office Pro with students and set that up in the classroom. And as a reminder, as we close out today, there is a little survey at the end of this just asking about additional needs that you may have from TestOut, or additional questions or things you would like us to know. That only takes just a minute. So again, thank you, Catherine. Thank you to everyone who's been listening, and please let us know if there's any way that we can help.